Grab the red vines and sit down. We're going to have an interview with Steve B. He's a mixing engineer over in LA for Dr. Dre and some other big acts. So, seriously, red vines and maybe popcorn or something. Guys, this week I had the honor of interviewing over the phone a buddy of mine and somebody I really respect in the music business, Steve B. He's a Grammy Award-winning mixing engineer, and he also masters. He's worked with some small artists like Michael Jackson and, Pussycat Dolls and Eminem and Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, small-time stuff. In fact, 50 Cent is quoted as saying, "Check out my man Steve B. If you want to be the best, you got to learn from the best." I got to know Steve when I hung out with him at NAMM this year, but I also hired him for mastering Miss Crystal's single, Take Me Home. So without further ado, here's my interview. So I've been kind of reading through your Wikipedia and looking at your stuff on Next Level Mastering and just kind of trying to get a sense of some of the stuff you've done, of course, after we've talked and stuff as well. And I want to hear a little bit about your time at Larrabee Studios.
Yeah, sure.
Were you an intern there?
No. Well, you know what? I started out as what's called a runner, and runner is exactly what it sounds like. It's a guy who goes and gets stuff, cleans up the studio. If someone wants lunch, I ran out and got lunch. That sort of thing.
Nice.
That part of my experience at Larrabee didn't really last that long. I think maybe I did it for 6 months there at the most, maybe a little less. Even then, I was doing a little assisting engineering and whatnot. But at that moment in time, it happened to be the time that Death Row was really popular. But even before I really got deep into Death Row, I got in with Muggs, and he was an early, late mid-'90s producer. And he was working on lots of different projects. His main project, I'm trying to think of, like Cypress Hill. I don't know why I can think of it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So DJ Muggs was working with Cypress Hill, and I started doing some Cypress Hill stuff. And that was like probably my first mixing and recording and mixing stuff.
Okay, so did you get to do some tracking on that then? Yeah,
I got to do some tracking, and then when it came to get a project like a Soul Suicide project, and Muggs presents the Soul Assassins, and I did a lot of stuff like that for him, and that was one of my first gigs. And right after that, I did some stuff with RZA from Wu-Tang, and I ended up doing like a song called "Bobby in the Belly of the Beast," and that was one of my.
Now, by this time, were you starting to mix, or were you just?
I was just kind of so new to the game. I was just in there to really take care of whatever they wanted to get done, and it just happened that I ended up mixing, the stuff for them. So, RZA needed to get something, and it had to be done right away. Had nobody else to do it, so here I am, the kid in the room. I think I was, like 22 years old or so, and like, all right,
what a gig.
Here, you do it. And the next thing I didn't know, like for the RZA thing, the Bobby in the Belly of the Beast, it was literally one of those things where I literally printed my mix, put it onto, back then, laugh, I literally put it onto a cassette for him. And he took the cassette and took it to the radio station to Power 106. And 2 hours after I got the mix done, it was on the air playing. Yeah.
So that would never happen now.
Yeah, that would never happen, right?
Oh,
that's crazy.
God.
It's like, oh my goodness, it's like 2 hours later, it's done. But so that's the early days at Larrabee. Were fun for me because I got to, not only did I get those experiences where I worked on my own with some pretty amazing hip hop artists, I got to work with some tremendous rock producers, some tremendous pop producers, guys like Tim Palmer, Dave Bianco, Dave Way. These were my mentors, the guys who just really taught me what it was to mix and what it meant to mix, And so I sat there and just, I was able to soak all that in and watch them, and then eventually what happened was, as I said, Death Row came in, and Death Row at the time was up in the valley. They couldn't really keep everybody up there, so their bigger artists they sent to Larrabee. And so, the Tupacs, the Snoop Dogs, Nate Doggs, all these guys came to Larrabee to work, and Dr. Dre included. And I got to work with these guys, and when that happened,
kind of at the oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah. So when that happened, that was the point in time where I really started getting kind of very deep into the the hip hop scene. I was fortunate enough to really watch Dr. Dre mix, the 2001 Chronic and the early Eminem stuff, and it was a fun time, and most of the time I was in there with people like Danny Boy or Snoop Dogg or Nate Dogg, and I was the engineer. I was the guy just recording their stuff, all to 2-inch tape at the time.
Sure.
And that was me cutting my teeth.
I don't think there's many people that can say they cut their teeth that way.
I mean,
it's incredible.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it was really the right place at the right time, and which is what I kind of tell people even to this day. I'm like, more than anything, it's less talent and more what you can do with your talent at the moment that you're given the opportunity, because in realizing what that opportunity is, realizing that here's the opportunity, make the most of it, make your impression now.
Sure.
And that's what makes the engineer, or makes the career that you might have. So,
it's like that quote. That quote. Being at the right place at the right time starts with being at the right place. Have you ever heard
exactly.
that?
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely did my before I put my resumes in when I was fresh out of college. I definitely did my research, and I only put my resume into a certain amount of, back then there were actually studios that were, working and hiring people. There's a few of them left, but very, very few of them. But Larrabee's probably one of the few of them that are left. But, I put into, Larrabee, I put into Record Plant, I put into Conway, I put into whatever. But it just happened that Capitol, but Larrabee happened to be the one that called me back the first. So I went to Larrabee for an interview, and I ended up when I got hired there, they instantly put me in. Well, it was mainly as a runner, as I said before, but they weren't very hesitant to put me into the room. They were like, "Yeah, he's ready enough. He gets it." I did come with a bachelor's in music with an emphasis in recording arts. So
you had some discipline under your belt. Yeah.
Yeah, there was some sort of credentials there. Where they were somewhat confident in my abilities. But at the same time, I made sure, as you said before, I was at the right place. I wasn't. Yeah. And I think today that's a harder thing to do, because the right place happens in a lot of people's bedrooms now. And so it's not as easy as it was when I came up, and it was a little bit more, like you had to go to a studio to get something done,
Right. Yeah, the internet's really changed all that, hasn't it?
Yeah, the internet's changed that, and just technology in general has changed that, where it's, you can have a full-blown multi-track system in your bedroom now, where, when I started in 1995, we were still using 2-inch tape. We're talking about, nobody had a 24-track machine in their bedroom,
Right.
That was, that's ridiculous, and most of these guys were using 48 tracks at that time, so that meant 2 24-track machines locked together with Synthi. So, it's even more impossible. But, so, looking back on it, I was really fortunate also, not only that I was at the right place, but I was actually at the right time for me, to through that system.
I got to ask you, I saw that it mentions that you worked with Jimmy Iovine. Are you talking about the, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. He's the guy from Apple, right?
Yeah. Jimmy Iovine, he's at the time, he's head of Interscope Records. And Jimmy
Iovine was some kind of record producer or something.
Yeah, well, he was a producer and a remixer before he was an executive. And he was actually a really brilliant producer slash remixer. From what I've heard, I don't really know much about it, but his half-inch cutting abilities were, beyond anybody else's. So back in the day, he was splicing up half-inch tape and making these remixes that, nobody else could ever do. He was one of those mad geniuses that put him in a little half-inch machine, and he would go in there with a razor blade. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go and I want to listen to some of his old stuff.
Yeah.
And tell me
everything U2 to, hip hop, he was.
Sure.
So.
Amazing. And he was instrumental, I guess, in the founding of Beats Audio, wasn't he? With Dr. Dre? Yeah,
exactly. And when he founded Beats, he wanted to get the gravitas of a brand, and him and Steve Berman were smart enough to latch onto Dre, and Dre brought the gravitas and the legitimacy to what the brand would be, because Dre was synonymous with just quality sound. Mm-hmm. And so, not to say he's not still, he's very much still that way.
Sure.
And he, as one of my mentors and one of the guys that I've learned so much from, I can say that he's probably one of the best mixers I've ever witnessed. I've never seen someone use an SSL so skillfully as I've seen Dr. Dre. He's an amazing. It's like out of all of his talents, and I might be biased because I'm an engineer, but out of all of his talents, I really appreciate his engineering talents probably as one of the most. He's just really skillful and really knows sonics.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's an interesting tidbit. I didn't know that about him. What would you say your claim to fame is so far as your skill in would it be in the producing side of it? Would it be in the engineering side of it, or the mastering side of it?
I mean, I would say that still it's probably the mixing side. People really know me best for mixing, and I do probably in my day-to-day week. I do more mixing than I do anything else.
Okay.
And on the mixing side, I game, through Eminem and 50 Cent and Pussycat Dolls and a bunch of
Usher and Destiny's Child and
a bunch of different projects worked on. I've been able to accumulate a resume of this guy can mix. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so that definitely I would say that on that side, one of the reasons I actually ventured off into there's a couple of reasons I ventured off into mastering. I ventured off into mastering also. It was because the music business is consolidating. Everybody's having to wear more hats. The producers are mixing more. The engineers are having to record and mix more. There's just everybody's wearing more hats. And I was like, well, what hat do I want to wear after this? I'm like, I don't want to go back down to being the engineering and mixing guy, because to be honest with you, I'm getting old. And I'm not sure how much I really want to stay up till 6 o'clock in the morning every morning recording someone's vocals. But what I don't mind is mixing a song, and then if it needs to be mastered, my partner Mauricio and I, who is technically Dr. Dre's engineer right now, we'll master the song also. And through that, now we've gotten other people that realize that, hey, you guys got a mastering set up. We'd love to try you out for mastering. So we're getting other business now because of that.
Well, that's how I met you. Actually, is I ended up hiring you for Miss Crystal's "Take Me Home" song.
Yeah, exactly.
You did phenomenal. You knocked it out of the park, man.
Well, I appreciate it. And, and the fun thing was that, we come from the mixing side, so we know what we give to mastering engineers, much the way you gave us something. And we want to work with the mastering engineer, with the mix engineer, to make sure that it comes out exactly how they want it. And
sure,
I remember that you and we went back and forth, because when I heard, the first time you're like, well, I want this really loud, and I went over the top. I went too far. And when you came back to me, you're like, dude, this was just too much, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're absolutely right. I want to make sure that, and that's our approach. We want to make sure that we're not trying to, we're just trying to slightly enhance what exactly you did with the mixing guy. But you know what I mean? That's our only goal. And
in fact, I think I remember you saying that you got into it because you had the same challenges. You'd be mixing something and you'd want the final product to sound somewhat like how you mixed it, and you'd get frustrated sometimes with other mastering engineers, and you're like, you know what? I need to do this. I need to step into this role. I think that's what you told me.
No, that's absolutely true. And actually, it was true of myself and my partner, Mauricio. We both had submitted mixes and then to the mastering engineer, and then got it back, and we're like, well, that's completely different.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I'm not even sure exactly how you got to this point, where it went over here. And so to us, it's just like, is there a moment where we can enhance something? Great. Let's enhance it. But if not, if it sounds great, why mess with it? Just boost it up to make sure that it's competing with everybody else, and don't mess with it. Make sure that it's pure. It's the way it should be.
Yeah. Most of the people that follow my channel are budding producers and mixers, and I'm a big fan of Pensado's Place. I watch it all the time, so I don't want to replicate what they're doing exactly or anything like that. I'm not even trying to necessarily compete with them. I'm just doing this mainly for my own good, and then anybody that wants to follow my channel. But I want to ask you a couple things about, I guess I want to focus a little more on people that are coming up in the world, the people that are mixing and writing songs out of their bedroom, out of their church, out of their small studios. And I want to talk a little bit about what you know in what makes a good hit, what makes a hit, and the importance of mixing in that process. And I'd love to pick your brain on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have some definite ideas about that. I'm not sure how right they are, but
sure. I think everybody has a little bit different opinion. So, okay.
In my opinion, a hit is a hit. And no amount of great mixing or mastering is going to make that hit more of a hit, really. In my opinion, it's kind of like, I always give this analogy. My analogy is a hit is like a classic car that sits in your grandma's garage. And if someone brings me a hit as a mixer and a mastering guy, all I'm going to do is dust off the dust, polish up the car, and present a classic car. And then all of a sudden it's a classic hit. There it is. There's a classic hit. And it was always a classic hit. It was always a classic car. I've just polished it up and maybe sonically made it sound a little bit better. But what makes a hit is really the writing and the music, the melody and how it connects with people. And that, to a certain degree, is the mystery. And then there's people that's going to claim that, oh, I know it. I got the formula. But it might be a formula for a year or two, but it's not really the formula. It's just, what we think is a formula. And, if it was a form, Scott Storch or whoever would be constantly, Dr. Dre and all the big guys, Rihanna, would be constantly just churning out hits every year. But we all know they have a shelf life. Yeah. And they have an era that they're creating. Not to say that they can't reinvent themselves and come back and write more hits, but it's right there in the word. They reinvented themselves. And Madonna was one of those people that was really brilliant at that for a long time.
Reinventing herself.
Yeah, she reinvented herself, and on top of writing great songs, she was very in tune to what the changes in sonics and what sort of production is popular at that moment, and so she went from one era to the next era, fairly flawlessly, and so that has, as an artist, that means that you have to realize what producers are making, the sonics that you need to do for that era, and so
that's interesting.
So that's where my opinion is, and I think the mixer can span across all those eras, and if you look at a lot of artists, you'll see that, or even mixers. If you just look at a lot of mixers' careers, people like Dave Way, who's probably one of the most amazing mixers of all time, you'll see, excuse me, you look at his career, and it spans from, the late 80s to current, and he's able to capture the sounds of all those people. But the thing is that, he's had the great luxury of working with just some great producers during those years.
Sure.
And, as a mixer, we're just there to facilitate what the producer is hearing, right? We just want to make sure that we take his vision and fully realize it, because in the end, it's one of those things that it's a little bit hard to go from start to finish as one person. And if you're a really great producer and you realize you can't do it all by yourself, you hire great engineers to help you out. And you say, that guy hears what I hear in my head, but I can't actually physically do it, through the EQs and blah, 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 compressors. And so I hire a guy like Dave Way. I hire a guy like Tim Palmer, or, any one of these guys that I consider, Shipley, Manny Marroquin, whoever it is. I hire one of these guys to fully realize my product. And that's kind of the greatness of some of these producers, is that they realize their limitations. They're like, oh, I'm a great producer. I make great music, but what I can't quite do is make it sonically exactly the way I want to hear it. But these guys do, and so that's where a separate pair of ears, helps you out.
How do you, as a mixing engineer, I would think that every producer you work with is you're going to have a challenge of trying to connect with them sonically and hear what they're hearing. How do you go about doing that?
What I usually do is listen to what they've done, and I ask them to give me your rough mixes. What is it, what is it you've done? And so I hear the rough mixes, and I hear the sonic gems inside of that rough mix. And I think that's what most, I can't speak for all mixers, but I would think that this is what most mixers do. Like, I get what you're trying to go for. It's one of those things, you're like, oh, I hear what you're trying to achieve here. And you almost did it. But if you just did this, this, and this, now it sounds like this. And then hopefully that producer goes, yes, there it is. That's what I was going for. And that was what I heard in my head. And because, the producer usually hears it in his head the whole time, right? And it's something that they're like, it's a finished product in their head already. Our job as a mixer is just to get it to that finished product that is in his head or her head.
Now, you've done some producing as well, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
So is it difficult not crossing over into the producing role when you're working with another producer and suddenly think, oh, that's a bad decision. Those strings, really don't sound, they don't belong there, or that beat is really, I don't know, whatever, is a little too loose for that groove or whatever. Do you ever find yourself trying to...
It's sometimes I do, and sometimes I'll make a suggestion that, like, maybe this won't fit. But it's very rare, and most of the time what I do is I try to figure out why he thinks it fits there, or she thinks it fits there. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, what if we did it like this? And maybe, maybe it has to be filtered somehow or done some certain way that it actually fits into the production. But then I all of a sudden get what they are hearing. They're for some reason they needed that hole filled or that moment to happen, and so I just try to make sure that I place myself in their position and listen through their ears. Why is it they want this here? And how does it fit into the mix? Sometimes when we get in the mix, there's the kitchen sink, producer who wants just to throw everything in there. And, I just have to, suggest to him, like, if we weeded some of this out, we might get more
space for everything.
Yeah, more space for anything. We might actually figure out, a better actual production. And we'll work together to, figure out what that is, but I'm never, at least I don't try to be, I never try to be as presumptuous to know what is should stay or should go. I always want to be in a collaborative moment with the producer and make sure that his input or her input is the focus. And I always, in my position as a mixer, I should always take a kind of a second seat. I can give my professional opinion and give, what I think should happen. But, there's many times, and it's not even only with the producers, sometimes it's with the artists. They always know sometimes better than I do, and I'll give you a prime example.
Okay.
I was working on a song with 50 Cent called Just a Little Bit, which was produced by Scott Storch.
Okay.
And where I thought the hook should go, 50 Cent put the verse. And where I thought the verse should go, 50 Cent put the hook.
Oh.
I'm like, hey, I think this might be reversed, production-wise. He's like, no, this works better this way. And after we recorded it all and got it all done, I listened back to it, I'm like, you know what? He's absolutely right. The hook works so much better with the drop production, and somehow the raised production worked so much better with the verse. And so it was one of those moments where I realized that the things that I thought to know right were wrong. No, you idiot. You should listen to this guy because this guy hears something that I did not hear.
Sure.
So
That's interesting.
That's one of those moments where he just kind of keeps you, I don't know, what I hope it would be, somewhat humble. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
And
especially if you're being hired by the producer, he's your customer.
Exactly. So I'm hired by these people, and so you got, it's easy to put yourself like, well, I've been doing this for blah 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 amount of years. I know what I'm doing. Blah blah blah. It was one of those moments where I was like, wow, all right, I don't know what I'm doing. He's absolutely right.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that feels that way. That's it for this week, guys. Come back next week and we'll have the second half of this interview. And until then, stay frosty and keep writing. Later.